Hello! Today I'm going to show you how to make quarter square triangles for the Colchester Mill Marvelous Mystery. To make quarter square triangles, you're going to start with half square triangles. In the instructions, it tells you to make your half square triangles 8 at a time, just like you did in January and February. The sizes are written in there. When you make them 8 at a time, you do not need to trim them. You can leave them whole, and then you'll be ready to do the next step to make quarter square triangles. To make quarter square triangles, you get 2 quarter square triangles out of 2 half square triangles. You'll start by marking half of your half square triangles with lines 1/4 inch on each side of the center diagonal. And make sure when you mark them in the opposite direction of the half square triangle seam. So they're going on yellow and blue, and mine, which is fabric 3 and fabric 1, we're making these out of. So they're going to go right like that. Then you will take your marked one with an unmarked one, and you're going to line them up so your fabric 1 and your fabric 3 touch each other. So the fabric 3 goes on top of fabric 1, and you can see when I fold it back where you get the quarter square triangle look of it. So they're going to overlap. And what's key to get your good points is to make sure your seams nest. You want to push them together so they're touching but not overlapping. And if you fold this back, you'll see it's going to go right up so the blue touches the blue right there. So you push them together. You can feel that there's no lumps, it's smooth, but they're close together and touching. You can put a pin in there to hold them. And I like to put my pin in the seam so it holds the seam allowance so it doesn't shift right there. And then you'll be ready to sew. When you're sewing, it makes your life easier if you can have that bottom seam under the feed dogs so the feed dogs won't catch on it. Have the seam pressed down and sew this direction right on your line. And since you're sewing right on a line, you don't need to turn it around, so you can keep that seam going the same direction so it doesn't get caught up. And you'll sew the second line. Just like that. You can chain piece to sew all of these at once and have them all made up, and then you'll be ready for the next step, which is to cut them in half. To cut them in half, you just put your ruler on the center diagonal between the 2 sewn lines and cut them apart. After you cut them all apart, you'll bring them up to your iron so you can press them. And the seam can go in either direction because they're symmetrical, and it will be the same either way. So you're going to put it on the ironing board, finger press it open, and then use your iron to just flatten it. Don't move your iron around because that will shake it up and stretch it out. You just want to keep your iron still to press it down flat, and you press from the front so that seam stays nice and open. And I'll do the second one just so you can watch again. Finger press it open, press it down. And there you go. So now we have our quarter square triangles, but they need to be trimmed to be made into perfect 2.5 inch squares. To do this, they actually do make a 2.5 inch square ruler, which you could use, and you could center it on there. The center of 2.5 inches is 1.25 inches. So you'd want to make that 1.25 inch right in the center. But I find it hard to hold such a small ruler without getting my fingers in the way of the rotary cutter. So I prefer to use my larger ruler, which is I use a 4.5 inch ruler. But you still need to line up the 1/4 inch, 1.25 inches of 1.25 is right there, and 1.25 is right there. So make sure you have 1.25 from the top, 1.25 from the side to that center point, and your center diagonal, your diagonal line on the ruler, 45-degree line, should line up on your piece. Some people like to put a piece of tape with a little arrow pointing to that spot so they can remember it, but I find once you're doing a lot of them, you get used to where the spot is, so I don't mark it, but if you're new, you definitely might want to put a little arrow pointing to that 1¼ inch spot for you. Okay, and then you're just going to trim 2 sides, and then you'll turn it around. And this time when you turn it around, you'll be able to do 2½ inches, 2½ inches, and you'll see your 1¼ should line right up if you were perfect in your cutting in the first one. So it's 1¼ and 1¼ to the center point, and 2½ and 2½ on the sides. And then you trim the top and the side, and you will have a perfect quarter square triangle. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or post it in our Facebook group, and let me know. And thank you very much.